Some songs never made it to your radio, not because they were bad, because they were too powerful, too honest, too dangerous. In the 1960s, the people in charge were scared of what this music could do.
Every night we go to sleep, we halfway dream.
So they banned it. They pulled #1 hits right off the air. But here's what they got wrong. You think you know the story of early reggae? You don't. Not yet. 10 songs, 10 bands, 10 stories they never wanted you to hear. Let's get into it. Number 10, the Folks Brothers. Oh, Carolina. Close your eyes for a second. You are in Kingston in 1961. Jamaica has not even gained its independence yet. The streets are alive. People are searching for something that feels like theirs, something that sounds Jamaican. Something that sounds like them. And then this record drops, and it hits different from anything before it. You hear these deep, rolling drums underneath the melody. Ancient drums, sacred drums, drums that don't belong in any pop song. But here they are, right in the middle of a hit record. Prince Buster produced this song in 1961. He brought in Count Ossie and his Rastafarian group to play Nia Bingi drumming. That is the sacred ceremonial drumming of the Rastafari faith. Nobody had done that before in Jamaican pop music. Not once. The song was raw, spiritual, and unlike anything coming out of the studios at that time, it was recorded for Buster's own label and became one of the first songs to lay the foundation for what would become ski. Prince Buster later said using Count Ossie was a controversial move. He was told Rastafarians were not welcomed in the mainstream music world. He brought them in anyway. That one decision changed Jamaican music forever. Years later, Shaggy took the same song and used the same rhythm, and had a massive #1 hit with it in the UK in 1993. The rhythm that was too dangerous for radio in 1961 became chart gold over 30 years later. In 1961, Rastafarians were seen by Jamaica's establishment as radicals. They were feared, they were dismissed, and broadcasting their sacred music on mainstream radio felt threatening to people in power. The stations pushed back hard. The Rasta connection was enough to make broadcasters walk away. This song did not get the radio play it deserved. Not because it was lacking in quality, but because it carried a spiritual force that made the establishment nervous. Number 9, Prince Buster, Al Capone. The song does not ease you in gently. It starts with a car crash, then gunfire, then tires screaming on tarmac, and then the horns kick in, punchy, jazzy, unstoppable.
My name is Capone.
You are not sitting in a quiet room when this plays. You are in a Kingston dance yard, and the whole place is moving. This is ska at its most cinematic. It feels like a movie, a Jamaican movie, where the streets are the star.
Don't call me.
Prince Buster released Al Capone in 1964 on his own label. The backing band was his All-Stars, a group featuring some of the finest jazz-trained musicians in Jamaica.
C-A-P-O.
The song was inspired by the fascination Jamaicans had with American gangster films. Al Capone was not just a criminal to Jamaican youth, he was a symbol of a man who refused to accept the rules of the system. You know, that kind of rebellion resonated deeply in post-independence Jamaica, where young men felt the promises of freedom had not reached them. The song eventually became a UK top 20 hit in 1967. The Specials took the skeleton of this song and built gangsters out of it in 1979, one of the songs that launched the entire two-tone ska revival in Britain. So a record that faced radio bans in Jamaica became the blueprint for a UK youth movement 15 years later. Jamaican broadcasters were not interested in giving airtime to a song that opened with gunshots and celebrated an American outlaw, not when Kingston's streets were already filling with rude boy violence. The timing made it radioactive. At home, it struggled. Overseas, it thrived. That story, banned in Jamaica, celebrated in Britain, is a theme you are going to hear again on this countdown. Prince Buster shows up again later on this list, and when he does, the controversy is much bigger. Stay with me. Number 8 is next, and this one proves that even anti-violence songs can get pulled off the air. Number 8, Alton Ellis, Dance Crasher. Alton Ellis had one of the most beautiful voices in Jamaican music history. Smooth, soulful, warm. When he sang, you felt it in your chest, but Dance Crasher carries a different kind of energy. It has an edge to it, a weariness, like a man who loves his community and is heartbroken watching it tear itself apart. You can feel the frustration in every note.
No, don't break it up, please don't make a fuss.
Alton Ellis wrote this song in 1966 because he was genuinely tired of what was happening at Jamaican dances. He said in interviews that rude boys were showing up, causing trouble, throwing bottles, making it impossible for regular people to enjoy themselves.
Don't use a knife to take another fella's life.
He put that pain directly into this record. Ellis was not celebrating the rude boy lifestyle, he was calling it out. He was one of the few voices in Jamaican music at that time willing to do that publicly.
So sorry.
Here is the bitter irony. Ellis wrote this as a warning, but the broadcasters who heard it did not care about his intentions. All they heard was a record that put rude boy behavior front and center. It was seen as giving the culture oxygen, even while trying to snuff it out. That tension between shining a light on a problem and accidentally amplifying it is something Jamaican radio dealt with constantly throughout the 1960s. The Jamaican middle class and the broadcast establishment did not want rude boy content on the air, even the kind that condemned it. Alton Ellis deserved far more recognition for his courage here. He used his platform to speak truth when it was not popular. And this record has been largely forgotten outside of serious collectors and deep music fans, which is a genuine shame. Alton Ellis tried to cool things down. The next man on this list also tried, except he was 18 years. Number 7, the Wailers. Simmer Down. Imagine a teenager from Trenchtown. He has been rehearsing under a mango tree on 2nd Street. He walks into Studio One for the first time. The Skate-A-Lights are already in there, the greatest ska band in Jamaica. And this teenager steps up to the mic and delivers a vocal that sounds like it belongs to someone twice his age. That teenager is Bob Marley. And this is the song that started everything. Simmer Down was recorded in 1963 at Studio One, produced by Clement Coxone Dodd. It hit #1 in Jamaica in February 1964 and stayed there for 2 months. The song was aimed directly at Kingston's rude boys. It was a plea, almost a prayer, asking them to stop the violence and cool their tempers. The Skate-A-Lights' horns gave it an irresistible energy. You could not stand still when it played. Which made the message even more powerful. You wanted to dance to a song that was begging people to stop fighting. Peter Tosh, one of the original Wailers, later said in interviews that he actually hated this song. He felt it was too soft, too compromising, but it was the song that launched Bob Marley's career. Without Simmer Down, the Wailers might never have got the foothold they needed. Sometimes the song you like least is the one that opens the door. JBC Radio, Jamaica's main broadcaster, it was under intense political pressure about what it put on the airwaves. Songs that mentioned rude boys at all, even critically, were seen as dangerous. The song had a rude boy swagger to it, despite its peaceful message. Broadcasters were nervous. It got airplay, but carefully, with friction. The #1 chart position tells you the people found a way to hear it regardless. Number 6, Desmond Dekker and the Aces' Rude Boy Train. 1967, Kingston is not just troubled, it is on fire. The Jamaican government has soldiers in the streets. The rude boy problem has gone from a social concern to a full-blown crisis.
Rude boy train is coming now. The rude boy train is coming now.
And right in the middle of all of this, Desmond Dekker puts out a Rocksteady track that makes the rude boy life sound like an adventure. The groove is irresistible. The rhythm is smooth, and that voice, there's no voice in Jamaican music quite like Dekker's, wraps around every word like warm smoke. Dekker released Rude Boy Train in 1967 on the Dr. Bird label. Up until that year, his music had been respectful and positive. This record was a pivot. It leaned into the rude boy world, not condemning it, not celebrating it exactly, but treating it with a kind of romantic attention that made young men feel seen. That was the danger. Music scholars and journalists at the time argued that songs like these had a profound influence on youth during a period when the crime rate in Kingston was climbing fast. Desmond Dekker is one of the most underrated Jamaican artists of the 1960s. He became the first Jamaican artist to have a top 10 hit in America with the Israelites in 1969. But that success overseas often overshadows the difficult terrain he navigated at home. The same music that made him a star in Britain brought him controversy in Jamaica. Jamaican broadcasters were not going to put anything on the air that could be seen as giving the rude boy movement more fuel in 1967. The timing could not have been worse, and yet the music was genuinely brilliant. And this is the tragedy of censorship. It does not just silence bad ideas. It silences great art at the worst possible moment. Desmond Dekker navigated a world where great music could get you in trouble. Number 5 is a record that went even further. It did not just push at the edges of what was acceptable, it walked straight through the door of political fire. Number 5, Prince Buster, White Man's Heaven is a Black Man's Hell.
More gold for your labor, or poor parents' work, the corn to his bone.
This is not a dance track. This is not a love song. This is a declaration. When this record plays, you are not at a yard party. You are at a rally. You can feel the weight of it, the seriousness of it.
Man's heaven is the black man's hell. When the slave...
Prince Buster was not making music for entertainment with this one. He was making a statement about race, colonialism, and the condition of black people in a world that was built against them. That kind of music does not make radio programmers comfortable. It never did.
Master wanted to have some sport. He would eat up on our parents.
In 1964, Prince Buster met Muhammad Ali and was invited to attend a Nation of Islam lecture in Miami. That experience changed him. He joined the Nation of Islam the same year and released this record on his own Islam imprint label.
We landed here in Kingston, Jamaica, 400 years to suffer.
The song was originally written by Louis X, who later became the controversial Louis Farrakhan. Buster took that message and pressed it into a ska record aimed at post-independence Jamaica.
Made to breathe. So, my friends, it's easy to tell that the white man...
Where racial identity and political consciousness were alive and raw. Think about the courage it took to do this. Prince Buster was releasing material on a label called Islam in 1964, a year when the Nation of Islam was considered dangerous by governments on both sides of the Atlantic.
Man's heaven is the black man's hell. When the white man came to Jamaica,
he did it anyway. That is not just artistic boldness. That is a man willing to put everything on the line for what he believes.
Though you're a pregnant black woman, you pull the plow like a horse, like a...
Jamaican broadcasters wanted nothing to do with a song carrying a Nation of Islam political message, while the island was trying to maintain friendly relationships with Britain and build its post-independence image.
God made a promise to Abraham. That is...
Now, this record was treated like it did not exist on mainstream radio. It never got the mainstream moment it deserved, but it circulated in back rooms, at sound systems, among people who needed to hear it. The band could not stop that.
He would be a stranger in a foreign land. They would suffer and be afflicted.
Prince Buster released Political Fire and watched it get buried by the establishment. Number 4 is about a man who did almost the same thing and became Jamaica's first international superstar as a result. Number 4, Desmond Dekker and the Aces, 007, Shantytown. This record sounds like Kingston feels in the middle of a hot summer night. Slow, tense, beautiful, and dangerous at the same time. The Rocksteady groove sits deep and heavy. And Dekker's voice rides over it with a kind of effortless authority that makes you pay attention even before you fully understand what he is singing about. This was music that spoke for the people who the system had forgotten. That is what made it so powerful. That is also what made it so dangerous.
At Ocean 11.
007 was released in 1967 on the Dr. Bird label. Up to that point, Dekker had been making music with positive, respectable messages. This song changed his whole direction. The lyrics put shantytown life the rude boy world, the struggle, the pressure, right at the center of a hit record. The Jamaican government had soldiers patrolling Kingston streets that same year. Putting this song on the radio felt to some broadcasters like striking a match next to a petrol can. The song reached the UK Top 15. Desmond Dekker reportedly spotted Bob Marley while they were both working as welders before their music careers took off. He encouraged the young Marley and told him to take his talents seriously. Think about that. The man who made one of Jamaica's most controversial songs of the 1960s also helped point Bob Marley toward his destiny. Sometimes the threads of history are woven together in the most unexpected ways. The Jamaican broadcast establishment saw this record as a glorification of exactly what they were trying to contain. But here's the truth: the song did not glamorize violence, it documented reality. It gave dignity to people who were invisible to the people in power. That is what great music does, and that is exactly why it scared the gatekeepers. 007 captured a moment that power wanted to keep quiet. Number 3 is where we stop and go deep, because what happened around this next song is one of the most dramatic controversies in Jamaican music. Number 3, Prince Buster, Judge Dredd.
Now my court is in session. Will you please stand?
I promised you earlier that one entry carries a controversy deeper than just a radio ban. This is the one. When Judge Dredd came out in 1967, it did not just get pulled off the air, it started a musical war that split Jamaica down the middle.
First, allow me to introduce myself.
Prince Buster created a character called Judge Dredd, a fierce magistrate who sentences rude boys to hundreds of years in prison. The record was his direct response to Kingston's rude boy crisis.
In my court, on the guitar, as I'm begging.
He was putting them on trial, tight Rocksteady production, Buster narrating like a courtroom drama. Nobody in Jamaica was ready for it.
I am the rude boy today. Who got this?
Now here is where it gets complicated. There are different versions of this story. And I want to give you the full picture. When the record dropped, the rude boys pushed back hard. And some people say it caused real unrest at dances. Others say the reaction stayed musical.
Rude boy, Adolphus checks.
Either way, Buster had stirred something big. Derek Morgan, one of Buster's own proteges, fired back with Judge Dredd in court.
Rude boy, Emmanuel Zachariah Zakipom.
What followed was one of the greatest musical beefs in Jamaican history, with artists lining up to release answer records on both sides. Some say the beef was deeply personal. Others say both men knew controversy sold records.
Now take 400 years. Oh, shut what they trying to do.
There are different versions of the story. Man, the truth probably sits somewhere in the middle. What is not in dispute is this: Jamaican radio walked away from all of it. When a song splits an audience that hard, no broadcaster wants to choose a side.
Put me up.
No, you're not, but I didn't
Well, quiet. 400 more.
The band gave the song a mythology it never would have had otherwise. Now, the character Buster built was so powerful that a British musician later took the name Judge Dredd as his stage name and went on to have 11 consecutive UK hits, every one of them banned by the BBC.
George, grab and flee.
Yes, sir.
Prince Buster was not just making music, he was building something that outlasted every band they threw at it.
Stop your crying. Rude boys don't cry, that's what I hear.
Prince Buster created a character so powerful it lasted for decades. Number 2 is a song that took on actual political power and got banned by the government of a whole country for doing it. Number 2, Justin Hines and the Dominoes, Carry Go Bring Come. There is something about this song that gets under your skin in the quietest possible way. It does not shout at you. It does not threaten. It sounds like a church song, like a proverb your grandmother might have spoken. It has that kind of ancient Jamaican wisdom running through it, rooted in the Bible, rooted in the land, rooted in a storytelling tradition that goes back centuries. And yet, this gentle, spiritual-sounding record was considered dangerous enough to pull from the airwaves of an entire nation. Justin Hines recorded Carry Go Bring Come in one single take for Duke Reed's Treasure Isle label in late 1963. It went straight to #1 in Jamaica and held that position for 2 full months until the Wailers knocked it off with Simmer Down. The song drew from biblical proverbs and the Jamaican oral storytelling tradition. On the surface, it was about gossip, about people who carry trouble from one place to another, but underneath, many people believed it was aimed directly at Alexander Bustamante, the powerful JLP, Prime Minister of Jamaica at that time. Here's what makes this story extraordinary. A song that was banned from Jamaican radio still managed to sit at #1 for 2 months. That tells you everything about how Jamaicans heard their music in the 1960s. It was not about the radio, it was about sound systems. It was about dances, it was about communities passing music from hand to hand the way you pass something precious. You know, they could not ban the people, they could only ban the airwaves. Justin Hines never got the international recognition his talent deserved. He came from a small town in northern Jamaica. He had a deeply rural, spiritual style, and he was never packaged or promoted for overseas audiences the way some of his contemporaries were. He kept recording through the ska, rocksteady, and reggae eras, all three, which is incredibly rare, but he stayed in the shadows of history. If you have never sat down with his catalog, I promise you it will be one of the most rewarding afternoons you ever spend with Jamaican music. #1 song, banned, still #1. That is the power of music over power. And now we have arrived at the one, the top, the most documented, most dramatic. #1, Max Romeo, The Wet Dream. Nothing else on this list comes close, not in terms of the ban, not in terms of the aftermath, not in terms of the sheer absurdity of what happened when this record hit Britain in 1968. This song was played on the BBC exactly twice. Two times, and then it was gone from the airwaves. And yet somehow, with virtually no radio play, it climbed into the UK top 10 and stayed on the charts for 6 months. That does not happen, except it did. And then the story gets even more unbelievable. Max Romeo wrote the lyrics for a rhythm track that was originally meant for Derek Morgan. Morgan turned it down, so did John Holt, so did Slim Smith. Finally, the producer turned to Romeo and said, "You sing it!" So he did.
Every night me go to sleep.
The song was produced by Bunny Striker Lee and recorded at Studio One. Though the story goes that Coxsone Dodd himself walked away from the mixing board in disgust when he heard the lyrics, leaving an apprentice engineer called Errol Thompson to finish the session.
Every night we go to sleep.
The song was released in Britain in 1968, or not in Jamaica. It never received an official Jamaican release. Now, this is the part of the story that you have to hear to believe. Max Romeo was performing at the Royal Albert Hall in London in 1969. Before he went on stage, he was told firmly, "Do not perform Wet Dream." Royalty is in the house tonight. Romeo agreed. He finished his set without playing it.
Lie down, girl, make me.
Then, from the royal box, the box where the royal family was seated, a voice called out, "We want Wet Dream," and the crowd took it up, the whole venue, thousands of people calling for the band song.
She don't lie down, girl, make me push.
Max Romeo says he was told later that Princess Anne was in the house that night. He had no choice. He went back to the mic and performed it, a song banned by the BBC, demanded by royalty, at the Royal Albert Hall. That is not a music story. That is a legend. Romeo always insisted publicly that the song was about a leaky roof. He said the man in the song was just asking a woman to help him fix a hole in the ceiling. Some people believed him. Most did not. In later years, Romeo was more candid in interviews and spoke more openly about what the song was really about. There are different versions of what his intentions were, and he has given different accounts in different interviews over the years. What is not in dispute is the impact the song had.
Look how you big and fat.
It launched what became known as rude reggae, a whole subgenre of Jamaican music built on suggestive lyrics and double meanings. Here's the thing about Max Romeo that most people do not know.
Like a big, big shot. Give the trumpet to.
He went on to become one of the most serious, spiritually powerful voices in roots reggae. His 1976 album War Ina Babylon, made with Lee Scratch Perry, is considered one of the greatest reggae albums ever recorded.
Down, girl, let me push it up, lie down.
The man who launched rude reggae with a band novelty hit became a roots revolutionary. That journey was from band bedroom song to roots masterpiece, is one of the most extraordinary arcs in Jamaican music history.
Lie down, girl, let me push it up, lie down.
2 plays on the BBC UK Top 10, 6 months on the chart, demanded by royalty. That is the #1 most banned song in 1960s reggae history, and honestly, Power never stood a chance.